Hello. Since its creation in the early 80s by writer Joe Devere and with art by Gary Chalk, the Lone Wolf series of gamebooks has only grown in popularity. The series is about to get its 32nd installment, and it has never been more accessible, both on bookshelves and on tabletops. My guest today is author Ben Devere, who has taken over writing duties to complete the saga that his father started all those years ago. We talk about the legacy of Lone Wolf, how he's maintaining the series and ensuring it stays close to its roots, and the future of the Kai. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today I'm in conversation with Lone Wolf author Ben Devere. Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining me. We're going to talk about the legacy and the story of Lone Wolf and how that's moving forward now into lots of new, exciting projects.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a fun place to start with this would be your dad and his relationship with miniature games, because I think there's a rich history there for like in terms of Joe Devere's relationship with miniatures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was his first love was music, but then he was discovering the world of D&D and the world of miniatures around the same period in his early 20s, at which time it was quite revolutionary, obviously. And really, and being on the forefront of anything is super exciting. But if it's a personal passion too, then it's a good combo.
Mm, yeah.
But he's, I mean, where would you start? I suppose he was contributing to White Dwarf. That was kind of his first foray into the professional side of it, I think.
Right.
So he was like a photographer. He loved photographing minis, and also was a contributing author for Mega War Games. So what we talking, like Thistlewood Battle?
Of course.
I
Yeah.
think one of them, the Battle of Pelennor Fields, was another one that he reported on. This is White Dwarf.
Yeah.
So he became a kind of voice in the hobby through that writing, and that was also his introduction into writing professionally. And as a photographer for Mega War Games, like I think they called the subtitle something like Big Battles in Miniature or something.
Right.
So this was big scale tabletop game. So they just went massive, and like how big can we take this? I'm not clear on the timelines because obviously I hadn't been born yet.
Sure.
But yeah, that's how it all started.
Yeah. Yeah, because that tabletop heroes column that he did in White Dwarf, that
Mm.
was basically the precursor to heavy metal. It was a showcase for amazing miniatures. I think a lot of his miniatures and Gary Chalk's miniatures were in there, but lots of their friends and colleagues covered as well. Like it's a really important period of White Dwarf history because
Mm.
it laid the foundations for where that kind of coverage would go in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with this idea of the backgrounds and the terrain and the settings being as important as the miniatures was something that I know that he was really into. So I remember his studio being obviously he had something like 30,000 miniatures in the end. I mean, he just had
Wow.
cupboards upon cupboards upon cupboards of these type of things.
Amazing.
And like armies and armies and armies of soldiers in matching outfits, and it was really kind of a bit nuts. And, but like the biggest part of his actual studio space, where he had this little cubby that he would work in, were the little trees and bushes and bridges and roads and houses. And one second, I'll be back. You can edit me walking away. So, for example, on my daughter's shelf between some of her books is this, which he just crafted out of bits of cardboard that he just kind of clipped out of
That's
boxes and
ace.
stuff and just pushed it, just kind of freestyled it all together. But the detailing on the tiling and stuff is just
It's
crazy.
brilliant.
So there's all of this kind of stuff everywhere. Like if you look at the detailing on these little things, they're actually readable once you get into them. It's so cool.
That's so good.
And the most famous one is this castle that he constructed out of toilet roll and stuff.
Right.
And it was I can't remember the guy's name now, but and he was a fan of my dad as a miniatures person way before Lone Wolf, and he saw that we were offering a lot of the collection on for sale on eBay and sending the proceeds to charity. And he got in touch personally to ask where this castle was, because for him this was like a really famous part of miniature history. And
Yeah.
he drove all the way down from I think like Leeds or Newcastle or something just to get this castle. And when he walked in, he nearly fell over from the shock of finally seeing this piece that he had been dreaming of. And for me, it had literally just been gathering dust in the shed and meant nothing to me, you know.
Right.
But then that was when I first, I think, really kind of clicked onto the scale of him as a name in the world of miniatures. Because for me, it had always only ever been about Lone Wolf, and
Hmm.
like I said, this kind of predated me even being alive. So I thought it was
Sure.
just a hobby he did in his bedroom. But yeah, I'm
Yeah. Well, an early like shining light and sort of guiding light for a lot of folks, I think, during that time, because that was a White Dwarf era where it covered the entire industry. It
mm,
wasn't just about Warhammer and miniatures gaming, because a lot of that stuff wasn't actually available yet. And like you said, the Thistlewood adventure, the scenario that was in White Dwarf, helped to embed the use of Warhammer rules for miniatures wargaming. So
yeah,
there's
like
loads
that
of
that
steps taken there.
that early '80s style pre-Hammer fantasy battles, I think they call
Yeah,
like rebuilding armies from that era to show the respect for the hobby's roots. I think he's been cited in a lot of kind of modern hobby circles for bringing that back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because he was also interested in, it was a lot of historicals. Is that right that he did?
Well, this is it. His real love was history. I think he
Right.
wanted to be a history writer first and foremost, and he had this history book in his head that he would talk to me about that he really wanted to put out. And I think, like we said, I think I said this when we first talked, but it was like the game books and Lone Wolf were the means by which he got to the end of being able to make enough money and time to play with miniatures and do miniature games. So it was like the books were really a means to an end. He was a writer because it gave him the opportunity to spend more time and money on miniatures.
Hmm.
As much as he loved the writing and the game books, that was never really his true passion.
Right.
Interestingly.
Sure. Yeah, because am I right in remembering that Lone Wolf and the setting of Lone Wolf and Magnamund came from his D&D games?
Yeah, it was
Is that
assessing.
right?
Magnum was assessing for a D&D campaign, and
Right.
then it became assessing for war games. But the war games were primarily historical, and the point would be to rerun a famous battle to see how it could have
Hmm.
gone. So if Napoleon hadn't sent in the Imperial Guard at the end of Waterloo, what would have happened if he'd kept them in reserve, and if he knew the Prussians were coming, would he have won the battle? That kind of thing. Like he
Right.
was very obsessed with not just the Napoleonic battles, but the American Civil War was his main thing. And you've got these very early.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
remember the name of this. Is this Citadel? What are they called?
Well,
These,
so it might have been, I mean, there were a lot of historical miniatures, but you've got your Hinchcliffe and
but this is
Heritage.
so rudimentary and early. But this is like I guess as a teenager, this would have been what he really first fell in love with. And
Sure.
so rerunning those battles, we've got some blue hats here. So would have
Oh,
been his
brilliant.
first foray, and then that, in the end, evolved into this level of 28 mil, which
Oh,
is that's
brilliant.
Napoleon there. And we we ran this little business together called Superior Officers, which was selling pre-painted officer class Napoleonic figures to collectors. It's very niche, obviously.
Amazing.
So once a week, I would go to his house and we would package and process all those orders together. It was more really just an excuse to kind of spend some time together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. It was a nice little business.
That's amazing. So he was painting those miniatures himself, was he?
No, so he actually because we were processing quite a lot, and
Right.
these would get painted in Sri Lanka to
Oh,
a really
okay.
high standard. He found
Right.
this little team who did a great job, and they would send them over in bulk to us, and then we would put them up on eBay.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, it was never something you could scale. It was really just that he didn't have a very lavish lifestyle,
Hmm.
so he didn't have a mortgage to pay, and he was quite happy just making a little bit here and there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. And then obviously Lone Wolf itself took off massively, became very popular, and then I would imagine to an extent became this all-consuming project. There's so many different facets of Lone Wolf that he went on to explore, whether that's the game book series or the tie-in stuff or other series as well. I mean that obviously must have taken a huge amount of work to build out that world and to tell those stories.
Well, because he had done so much work with Magnum as a D&D setting, to the point where he won the international D&D championships in San Diego.
Right.
He was the first non-American winner of the competition, and this is at the height of D&D, so there was a lot of competition. And he tells the story quite well on a YouTube interview about the tricks he played in order to win that campaign, which is actually a really good story. Even for someone like me who doesn't have really much of an interest in RPGs, I didn't even really understand what an RPG was until recently. It took a while to sink in because this is not my background at all. Like I had no interest in it until I had to.
Hmm,
But he was working with and for Ian Livingston, and this is at the first Games Workshop.
sure.
So he was asked, I think, by Ian to write a fighting fantasy book, and being my dad, thought, hang on a second, why would I do that when I could just write my own series and take it to a publisher, which is what he did. And I think they sold something like 120,000 copies of Flight from the Dark in the first weekend. And so it was this huge, huge smash. And then they commissioned another two books. So he wrote Fire on the Water and Caverns of Calte, which then just kind of exploded. You've got to remember that this is before computer games.
Hmm,
So you've got to put yourself into the mind of like when it comes to any kind of interactive entertainment, this was cutting edge technology. The idea of a book that you could interact with was a very fresh idea. So it would have felt like, an augmented reality or virtual reality headset. Like this is like the cutting edge technology of the day.
hmm,
But technology moves very quickly. So before too long, they were kind of out of fashion in a way.
sure.
But his original idea was, look, there's a lot more bookshops in the world than there are game shops, and as much as I love making games, we're gonna shift a lot more units in bookshops, which at the time was true. Whereas now it's the other way around. We would sell a lot more Lone Wolf books in game shops than we would in Waterstones because they don't know where the hell to put them,
Right. Sure. Yeah.
which has been a problem.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's all I gotta say about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point there, just about you were saying that, this is not, it's not been your passions and your sort of world. So you're coming to, obviously over the last few years, you've been working in this space. You've obviously done loads of work to keep Lone Wolf alive and to explore that world. Like, what's it been like learning about it and learning about the industry and the sort of the world of gaming when you yourself are sort of not a natural gamer, if you like?
I think the word is incremental.
Right.
Um, Also, like I did it on the side to begin with. My background's in events, so I was busy booking and programming big music festivals and other events, which was like a more than a full-time job. So I was only able to look after Lone Wolf on the side.
Mm,
And I had a lot of help. He set me up with Vincent as the handover was taking place, and it was taking place like we're talking last minute, like in the hospice
right.
is when he dropped this on me. We had never talked about it. He had
Oh,
never shown any inclination that I would take over. He hadn't even written a will. It was some form of denial, I think. But
right.
you'd think he would have at least maybe hinted that I would be taking over. But no, it was last minute. It was a real, actual deathbed request. Here are my notes. This is how I want you to finish the books. We took about 10 hours of dictation in the hospice with Vincent on the end of Skype so that he could help me understand what was being said. We took it all down on a recorder and then transposed it,
Right.
transcribed it, I should say, and then And then Vincent was just remarkable at distilling the notes into a form by which we could create the shape of these three books that needed to happen, which was, for me, that was the task, was to finish these three books.
Mm.
And then it became clear to me that the actual task was to bring back Lone Wolf, and that it only really existed on the fan forums and on this kind of shoddy website he had set up just to sell this map project. And I saw, I mean, I'm a promoter, you know, I've built a couple of businesses before this happened. So I could see the potential. And it happened that I had been in this industry of events for about 15 years at this point, and it was getting boring. I was looking for the next thing to do. And then when the pandemic hit and all events stopped, that was when I had the opportunity to really kind of take Lone Wolf seriously. And we built a proper website. We got a proper shop going. I started thinking about bringing back the books in a definitive edition, which happened later in 2021, and actually do them justice, because they had never really come out in a consistent format, the entire series. And there were holes, there were gaps, there were books where there were whole sections missing, like none of the covers were kind of cohesive,
Mm.
coherent. The quality was all over the place. Certain territories got this, certain territories got that. Everyone was using a different logo.
Right.
And it was like the first rule of branding, guys, like just use the same logo. I had to kind of really kind of bend the arm of a lot of people. And then that helped me kind of find my feet, and I started to get more confident, like being as the kind of business manager.
Mm.
And then having all of this, like I was saying earlier, this team of experts who understand the world better than I ever could, meant that I didn't really need to have to worry about that. I just had to worry about the kind of nuts and bolts of it.
Right.
And people like August Hahn and Vincent and Richard Penwarden and later people like Jonathan Stark, and I mean there's many people that I need to thank. It goes on and on, but it's just, you know, it takes a village to raise a publishing empire.
Sure. I'll bet. Yeah. I mean, that must have been quite a like it's a surprise to hear that it was not a sort of conversation that you'd had previously, and obviously it is a quite a weight of responsibility. It must have been quite a challenge to reckon with that responsibility, knowing how popular the world is and the potential for Lone Wolf and like where it could go and all that sort of stuff.
Well, like I said, it was incremental. So at the time, I didn't really understand the scale of what was being asked,
Right.
which is helpful because I probably would have said no.
Sure.
But then as what was the first real inkling was when we announced that he had passed on his Facebook page, just seeing the reaction
Mm.
of the fandom and this kind of outpouring of respect and shock and love was like really overwhelming. And the weight of the comments coming through actually crashed the computer because there were so many coming in.
Wow.
Um, and then at the funeral, we had a lot of fans turn up, and then I went to Luca, which was like a second funeral because he had a second family of fans and colleagues in Italy. And that's when I was like, okay, this is actually quite a big responsibility. I can't mess this up.
Mm.
And so we wrote Dead in the Deep, I think 2019 it came out, maybe, or 18. And everybody loved it. And that was obviously, that was the moment that was the biggest, that was the most frightening moment, because the imposter syndrome obviously is just off the chain. And I did try and cheat. I did try and use ghostwriters. I did try and like, because I just thought I can't. I'll mess this up if I try
Mm.
and do this all on my own. Vincent obviously wrote the first draft with a little bit of guidance from me in terms of narrative, but not really, because that was where we had the most thorough notes from my dad. Was that book, because it was the one he was going to write next.
Right.
So it was all quite clear what he wanted. It's a really tight, kind of contained adventure as well. It's a very simple story. You've got to rescue your friend from this place. That's it. So it's quite, there's only like three locations. And so I just focused on making the writing feel like Dad's writing. And it turned out that what the work I got back from the people who were ghost writing took a hell of a lot of editing for me to get it back to sounding more like Dad. And it was Vincent, I think, who turned around and said, look, your tone of voice is just naturally your dad's tone of voice. So why don't you just do it yourself? And
Mm.
I did because I was creating more work for myself doing it the other way. And it turns out that I quite enjoyed it. And then I wouldn't say that I'm anywhere near as good as him or even class myself as even a writer. I feel more like an editor to be honest.
Right.
Because I'm taking my dad's stories and Vincent's drafts and I'm kind of sculpting them into shape. I'm not creating anything really. I'll put in an idea or a bit of dialogue here or there or kind of add color, but I wouldn't call myself a writer. That would seem like cheating. We make
Well,
a good team, you know. It's my dad's story, it's Vincent's knowledge, and then it's my kind of polishing.
right.
So it's the
Yeah.
three of us really that are writing these books, and we've got a team of I think up to 20 people who then edit, who then play test and balance and tell us where they think it can be improved. So it's a real team effort, which is great.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, and to have built that team up that to be able to sort of live up to that legacy as well. I mean, it must be, you mentioned that the Dead in the Deep is relatively simple. You're now coming up to that final story, which
Yeah.
has got a lot of threads to draw together, and it's kind of, not to pile the pressure on, but I imagine feels like there is a
This
lot
one
to
feels
do.
harder. This one feels
Right,
scarier. This one, the second one we wrote, Dusk of Eternal Night, was there was a lot more going on, but it was in the pandemic, so we could focus. There wasn't much else to do. And so it felt, looking back at that, doesn't feel like it was too much of a chore. We got it written relatively quickly. I think it took about 9 or 10 months.
right,
And also the story itself was really fun. And it starts with this huge epic event, the resurgence of one of the biggest baddies. And then you've got these three narratives concurrent that you can choose from that go to these really cool locations with really cool villains and loads of adventure. And then it ends with another epic showdown where another big baddie is kind of revived. And so it was just wicked to be able to write these epic. You know, if you're a fan of, I am a fan of fantasy. Like I'm a fan of Tolkien and others like Gaiman and Philip Pullman and obviously C.S. Lewis and Lewis Carroll as well. And like I know what good writing sounds like. I have a literary background in academia. I've got a creative writing degree. I did script writing for film and television, and I've done some professional writing in the past. So I know what good feels like,
Hmm.
and that felt pretty good. There were some moments in that I was really proud of.
yeah,
And again, the reaction from the fans has just been amazing. I mean, Dead in the Deep was voted the second best lone wolf book of all,
right.
which I was so glad that they didn't put it number one because that would have been, that'd been so embarrassing. But number two is obviously the best you can hope for.
Hmm.
But yeah, in terms of the one that we've just finished, like that was the hardest one to write by a country mile because what you're having to do is you're having to wrap up all of these threads that have been set in motion for 40 years, and you
Hmm.
have to find a way to reconcile these character arcs in a way that doesn't feel forced and doesn't feel retconned in any way, and still reads like a great book. Like, and it took us 2 years, this one.
Right,
And we've ended up having to split it into two books because it was just too much for us to cover. So we've split it into volume one and volume two.
right.
And there were points in this one where I just thought, we can't do this. So we had to there were times where I had to take breaks of up to like a month or so to just get back in the zone. Because the thing about writing is it's very lonely.
Hmm.
And you do end up second guessing yourself. When you spend too long on a passage, you can't read it back without just thinking, this is terrible. It's cheesy, it's derivative, it doesn't need to be there. I sound like an amateur. And then you come back to it a month later, and you're like, oh, actually, it's pretty good.
Right.
So you kind of drive yourself a bit crazy. But then with the editing team being at work now, we've had our first feedback from fans for this book, which I was convinced wasn't good enough.
Right.
And one of the biggest fans that we've had working on it, Travis, has said possibly the best book in the whole series. So I
Wow.
was like, hell yeah, that'll do. Um, so yeah, like I'm really excited for it to come out because once it's out, it's out. There's nothing more you can do. There's no more
Yeah.
tinkering to be done. See you later. And now we've just got to write the final one. And the final one is literally just a massive throwdown.
Hmm.
So it's like, you're talking Avengers Endgame, real like big showdown. Everyone's just fighting, and it's the big battle to end all battles. And so that'll be fun to write. There's not too much complexity to worry about. We've got it all worked out. We've been working with the Michael Brislin and Jonathan Stark, who are I mean, they're both professional developmental editors and writers in their own right. Jonathan wrote the Huntress series, which is one of the most innovative game book series I think ever.
Mm,
Very proud of him for that. And their input was just so invaluable. Just finding the things that we weren't seeing. And we needed that to happen before we put this book out so that we can change things that affect the next book without it already being published and being too late. So that's been like really helpful, and it meant that we could really plan for the final book in a way that now we just know what to do now. We'll be able to knock that one out pretty quickly, I think.
right,
The plan is for it to come out as the definitive editions have caught up. So
right.
at the moment, we're publishing books 17 and 18. And by the time we get up to book 32, which is the one that's just about to come out, definitive, we'll be ready to publish the very, very last one. And so the last book will be the capstone of the definitive edition reprints. And that will be the point at which, hopefully, with all the miniatures and games that we've been talking about and will talk about, then it will be a complete thing.
Sure.
And then you just switch to focusing purely on kind of new material and marketing and making sure that you're creating a packaged IP that just looks and feels like a really well established, which it is, piece of property, so that then you start attracting AAA game developers, film and TV rights, and all the other things that will then elevate it to where it kind of deserves to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I suppose you've then got the actual sort of epic heart of the whole thing, the complete saga
yeah.
of Lone Wolf is then it literally is finished, right? It's
It's
complete.
literally finished and it's out in a really nice format, in hardback, in limited edition, in paperback, in ebook, in as an app, like in every
Mm.
way you can imagine. It'll be really easy to find, and we need to sort all of that out because at the moment the website's a bit of a mess.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the strategy game and the miniatures then. So this is all part of that sort of the revival, the renaissance of Lone Wolf and exploring different ways to be in the world. So the miniature game that's being developed at the moment, sort of what's the vision with that?
So we've got two games coming out. It's essentially three products. You've got the miniatures line, you've got the skirmish games, you've got the strategy game.
Right,
So the miniatures line is what it says on the tin. It's a line of miniatures. The first one we're putting out is essentially a remake, a reboot of this I think it's called Giak Attack. The Citadel pack that came out in 1985,
right.
1986. So all of the miniatures that were in that collection, the Gorgaz, the Prince Pelethar, the Giaks, the Lone Wolf. Here's the original Lone Wolf.
Oh wow,
He looks slightly different these days. He looks a little bit more badass. Here he just looks like he's just on a nice kind of gentle walk in the park.
that's great.
Um, so it's quite cool that the first thing we're doing is a throwback. It's like
Mm,
it's kind of a homage, if you like. But accompanying that miniatures pack will be this skirmish game that's being developed by my business partner Rene, who helped to set up HomeGuard Games, whereas I run HomeGuard Press. And the skirmish game it's basically just a little battle that happens on a hexagonal kind of sheet map with a bridge. And we're working on the rules set now, but it's I mean, if you asked me to describe what a skirmish game is, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, I kind of understand how the rules work, but it still needs a bit of play testing. But the idea is that it's a nice, quick game that you can play. Like you can get it out and bang, you can have a really cool little battle.
mm,
It takes, like half an hour.
yeah,
And you can just rerun the fun again and again. And then what you do is you bring out different settings which align with parts of the books that everyone knows and loves. So you'll have another set of miniatures that align with that fight, the famous fight. So you'll have, I don't know, like the battle at the gates of Homeguard against Sagana, and you'll get your first kind of big boss piece, which will be a much bigger miniature. Because I think 20 or 21 Dark Lords.
Right.
So the game, the goal will be that you'll have your 28 mil, but then you'll have your, I think it's 30, I can't remember the scale of it, but whatever, you'll have the bigger format miniatures for these Dark Lords. And being
Right.
and collecting all of those will be sick because a lot of them have never even been illustrated. So you'll have this line of awesome Dark Lords lined up on a shelf by the end of it. And that'll take a few years to manage. But anyway, the strategy game is a much bigger project which our colleague Dan Weigel, who was actually one of the writers on our anthology, we did two volumes of short stories that were written by fans, and his is I think the first story in the second volume, and it was my personal favorite actually. Not that they weren't all fantastic. Sorry guys, I'm not saying yours weren't, but his I really liked, and I was thinking about how to do a big kind of one ring Star Wars Rebellion's kind of Risk style full world tabletop game when he literally just popped up with this proposal of exactly that. And he had spent all the time to develop it and test it already. And he came at me with this pitch that he had obviously prepared for and gave me this like half an hour spiel. And it was a question of me waiting for him to stop talking so I could say, yes, we're going to do this. Because I'd already decided within about 2 minutes. I was like, you're the guy. So that was fortuitous. It's an asymmetrical two-player strategy game, so you only need two people to play it, which is great because it makes it far more marketable.
Hmm.
So you play as either the Dark Lords or the Freelands, and in the test game that I sat in on, it just so happened that the game played out almost exactly how the first two books play out.
Right.
Just we just did they played it we played it as just as a game, and it just happened that it matched up with the events in the books in this weird way. Because remember you're using dice and stuff, so it is random.
Yeah.
But it was really cool, and the coolest thing about these games is every time you play it, it's completely different.
Sure.
And it's you're doing trying to conquer the world, so it's fun to play as both sides. And you've got this big whole world kind of battle clash, world war of Magnament going on, but at the same time you've got Lone Wolf, you've got this kind of Lone Wolf as a character
Mm.
who goes on these quests as it's going on. You've got this kind of like superhero thing that can mess things up and really kind of change the game literally. So it's really clever. It's really well thought out, and I'm really excited for people to play it because I think I'm not just saying it. I'm genuinely really think it's good.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
got a,
So then it's all about marketing, isn't it?
of course, yeah, which I imagine is a challenge in and of itself.
Well, luckily we've actually hired a agency to help us with this
Right.
one because I'm not confident enough to market this on my own. So we've got you got to spend money to make money, and it all comes down to luck at the end of the day. I mean, the economy's in a terrible place. Things like tariffs aren't helping.
Mm.
It's a weird time to be releasing a product, but at the same time, gaming is in this strange, almost kind of recession-proof position where people, when they don't have money to go out, they stay in and double down on their hobbies. So
Mm.
there is that as well. But the fulfillment and shipping of a product like this is very complicated. Dan's doing a great job of figuring out the most effective way of getting things to people for cheap. And then these things pick up momentum, don't they? Like so, with a bit of luck, we'll get some great reviews, we'll get some influencers talking about it, and then the fans will like it, and then you'll start getting orders from game shops and all the rest of it, and you just kind of hope for the best. I mean, the worst thing that happens is, we don't raise enough on the campaign, we lose a little bit of money and time having designed it, and we just get on with something else.
Mm. Sure.
It's kind of, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, what's the just thinking about like the roots of Lone Wolf at your dad's gaming table, right? So,
Yeah.
and we know his love for miniatures was there from the very off. Is there like like it must feel nice to be bringing Lone Wolf back to the miniatures table. It's kind of like going full circle almost.
So my first memories are being underneath his gaming table as maybe a 2 or 3 year old. And every time a character would be killed, they would give me the dead characters, and I would create these processions of characters like they're all on parade. And I'd be under the table playing with all of the playing with the dead.
Right.
um, and yeah, like I said, because it's his first love, to be finally bringing out a line of, well, not that it has already happened, to be bringing it out in this fashion with a full bells and whistles, with the skirmish and the strategy games, and to be working with Francesco as well, like the highest possible level modelers. He would be really, really excited by this, so that feels great.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's just a shame he's not around to witness it, but it feels good. The legacy aspect of all of this is, I like to kind of moan about the poor me. I had to do this thing I didn't want to do. I didn't know anything about it, but a kind of a legacy business like this has a lot of meaning, regardless of whether you're into it. I mean, people inherit farms, they inherit shoe shops, they inherit painter and decorator businesses. It doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. The fact that it's a legacy, it's a Devere and Sons legacy is business, that's the point, really. The fact that I get to write these cool adventures is like the icing on the cake. Because I'm not making gloves, which I would be equally shit at.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for finding the time to chat to me about all the exciting stuff that's happening with Lone Wolf and keeping that legacy alive. It's been great to chat.
No worries. Thank you from Robot Hitler. Thank you from Gangster Stalin. And a very big thank you from Mr. Robot Hands Chairman Mao. Um, and also for all the believers out there, Moses says thank you very much for your time. And and of course, let's not forget the big guy himself, Mr. JC.
That is a diverse collection right there.
Tell me about it. I mean, I try not to let Blackbeard mingle too much with Jesus. They do not get on.
Huge, huge thanks to Ben for joining me to chat about his work on Lone Wolf and the future of the series. And if you want to find out more, you can follow the link in the description where you'll get all the information about the books and the games that are coming soon. I'll be talking about Lone Wolf again later in the year. I've got some more interviews and some history to share about it on the main Jordan Sorcery channel, so keep an eye out for that. And if you would like to support my work in the meantime, check out patreon.com/Jordan Sorcery. There's loads of early access, exclusive content there, podcasts, articles, loads of Warhammer and tabletop history. So if you're interested in that, come and check it out. I would really appreciate it. Thank you once again to Ben. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery.